Hello, it's Jansen, and immediately following the White Lotus Season 3 finale, I put out a YouTube short video with some immediate thoughts. But that was less than a minute long, and I wanted a longer video to talk about Season 3 as a whole. So, coming up in just a second, White Lotus Season 3 spoilers. Let's talk about Season 3 as a whole. Overall, I really enjoyed it, and for those first 3 or 4 episodes, I thought it might be my favorite season of White Lotus ever. Then I thought it kind of stalled in the middle few episodes, and I thought some of the setups didn't quite get there for me. I liked how the Rick story and the Gay Talk story ended up going, but during those middle slumps, I didn't really think we were doing much with those characters. The finale though, aces. Some twists, some turns, some things I saw coming, and some things I didn't. I always like a good surprise. In White Lotus, I usually expect that none of the bad people, which are most of the characters, to get what's coming to them. Except this year, Tim Ratliff and his family, it seems that they did. Believe me, for most of the season, I thought that they would get their phones back and there would be a miraculous call saving him, telling him he's off the hook. But Saxon's last look on that boat really tells me that's not what happened. So that was a nice surprise. And that's why now is a good time to talk about the Ratliffs as a whole. Specifically, let's start with Victoria. What a hoot she was. Parker Posey better get that Emmy nomination. Maybe the funniest character that's been on a White Lotus season ever. Another person I wanted to highlight was Patrick Schwarzenegger. He did a great job. I wasn't sure about him. I've seen him in a couple projects, but he didn't have a ton to do in those other than be the cool guy, be the guy that he probably kind of is like in real life. This one, he really expanded his range, and I thought he did a great job. Next up is my favorite dynamic of the entire season, Lori, Kate, and Jacqueline. Those three were written so well. I mentioned it in that short video. They just really stood out to me as three people that live in this world, that live in our world, and Mike White somehow wrote the perfect lines that encapsulated all those friend groups that you've run into where you know one person is talking about another, and when the other people are gone, they're talking about them, and so on and so on. And of course, it also has Carrie Coon, who better also get an Emmy nomination, but that could be just because I love Carrie Coon in everything that she's in, but once again delivered a powerful monologue at the end to really wrap that story up in another kind of surprising turn for me. I probably should have seen that coming, that they would all come back together. They've been friends for so long, but her monologue really made it come back in a way that made a lot of sense and even showed that they have some heart. Now, those were some of my favorite things from this season, but one critique, and this is probably one of the biggest ones that I have, the White Lotus staff. Normally, I know they're not the main characters, but they're usually a pretty big part, and they're usually a pretty entertaining part. I just thought that this year's cast was a little lackluster, and I'm not saying the performances, I think they did well with what they had. I just don't think they had them do much. Guy Talk and Mook ended up okay. I like where Guy Talk's story ended, but the whole way to get there really wasn't my favorite. And then of course, the man who was running the show, not my favorite. Didn't have a lot to do, especially in comparison to the first two people who were running the hotels. He just wasn't up to par. And again, I think that has more to do with just the storylines than the acting itself. However, speaking of Gay Talk, I did like that he kind of ended up where he did. He got the money, he got the power, and he got the girl, just like Belinda alluded to earlier in the season. And there was a nice push-pull with his morals and his religion in that. Obviously, he chose not his morals and not his religion, so I'm not saying I'm a fan of that, but I like that he made a decision and it did make him a more interesting character. Speaking of Belinda, I also thought this storyline was fine. I wanted a little bit more from it throughout the season, but another instance of what I thought the finale did, which was kind of save the end of this season, and that's because the way that they put Belinda in that intense situation, I was wondering what's going to happen. Now, the ultimate resolution was something that I thought would happen. I didn't understand why Greg Gary would kill another person when he could pay her off with a relatively low amount of money for his net worth, as was explained by Belinda's son. So this made a lot of sense to me, and I do love that turn from Belinda kind of into Tanya, word for word in some instances, explaining why they're not going to go into business together. I thought that was another great instance by Mike White of turning a character that we thought was nothing but good into someone who can be bought off. And finally, I've saved the best or worst for last, and that would be Chelsea and Rick, our beloved couple who was doomed really from the start. If you looked at any gambling site before the finale, you would see that Chelsea was the odds-on favorite to be killed, and for good reason. She spoke so much about death, she spoke so much about harmony and destiny and things of that nature, plus she was just so kind-hearted, which seems like a bad omen in a White Lotus show. In fact, when her and Rick reunited on the beach and they had this wonderful moment and she's talking about how they're going to die together in the future, I turned to my wife and said, this is not good. And I knew right then Chelsea's probably dead. Now, what I didn't know, that Rick would also be dead. So that was, again, a nice upping of the stakes and a nice twist that I didn't see coming. And sadly, just a few moments later, I was proven right when Rick starts the gunfight, and the gunfight is over with him and Chelsea both dead. It's a sad way to end the season, but it's also a satisfying conclusion to a season of television that I thoroughly enjoyed every Sunday night. I was excited for the show to start, and I couldn't wait to ask everyone the next day how they liked it, what they thought, and talk about whatever crazy thing happened the night before. So those are my thoughts on season 3. I enjoyed this season, enjoyed it quite a bit, and I thought they really nailed the finale. What did I get wrong, and what did you think about it? Let me know in the comments, and we'll talk soon.